Could Iowa possibly have its choice of two quarterbacks? How about that? Welcome in here to Hawkeyes Live, right here at the Voice of College Football, coming your way each and every Tuesday. It's 5:30 Eastern. It's 4:30 where it counts. And we appreciate you stopping by. Pull up a chair. 60 minutes of Iowa football talk. Leave your comments and questions. We certainly appreciate your contributions there via the Super Chat or Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Those options in the description section of every video here at the Voice of College Football. Corey Breda on his way. And we've got Elliot Clough here. So we've got a special guest to break things down as well in the offseason. You can catch Elliot's work at Iowa Rivals. And bingo, he heard his name somewhere on the internet, and here he shows up. Hey, Corey.
You just had to start without me, didn't you, Mark? It's all right. It's all right.
We've got a busy guy here. He's got stories to chase.
It is 4:35, Corey. So
how's your dog doing?
My dog's great. He is sleeping like a baby back there.
Okay. All right.
Well, I was trying to hide him with the camera, like angling myself.
No. Elliot, we are trying to do everything we possibly can to go viral. So anything, the dog may do something crazy out of nowhere and this thing could take off. So we're looking for those things.
If only you knew Max, because that is so true.
Okay. All right. Everyone knows Corey Breda from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And again, we appreciate Elliot stopping by with so much going on. And I may get burned on this comment because I was all over this program for the last couple of weeks about not taking advantage, Elliot, of a quarterback transfer portal that was loaded with talented, experienced players in December. And it looked like there were no options, but there's one experienced option here in the Big Ten. And then, of course, there's a name that draws some interest from people just based on the name itself. But of course, if you explore General Booty's background with his family and also his recruiting ranking coming out of high school. So between those two options, let's start the conversation here. What do we know right now? Let's start Brendan Sullivan.
Real quick, what was the kid that's from Oklahoma, Mark?
General Booty.
One more time?
General Booty.
Okay, got it. Go ahead, Elliot.
If you hadn't heard, Corey.
I hadn't heard that. That's an interesting name.
First thing I want to say to you guys is you will not be grilled by me at all in terms of referencing the fact that there were plenty of quarterbacks available in December or January, because I have been saying that pretty much over this whole time frame. We've been talking about Brendan Sullivan and General Booty. Just one more time for you, Corey. That is entirely due to the fact that they knew they weren't going to have a new offensive coordinator, or they weren't going to have their original offensive coordinator back for this coming season, and then didn't make any headway in that direction for however many months, like 5-6 months, something crazy. And they could have got themselves an OC. They could have gotten themselves a quarterback and had a quarterback with them for the spring to learn the new offense. So they didn't do it. That is first and foremost. You have to address that when we're having this conversation. As far as Brendan Sullivan, General Booty, honestly, I mean, I don't know how you look at the dichotomy between these two and think anything other than Brendan Sullivan being the best option. Like, if you can get both, honestly, we're at a position where if you can get both, you take both. You don't want to spend a ton of NIL money on both these guys, right? But they're at such a bad spot with the quarterback position in terms of depth, guys you can trust, guys that you can trust to stay on the field. In terms of health, I mean, you've got Cade McNamara, who's had two knee surgeries back-to-back years. Marco Lainez, who couldn't hit the broadside of the barn prior to 11-on-11. Corey and I have talked about that in the open spring practice. Corey and I have talked about that previously. He looked better in 11-on-11, which was just kind of strange. And then James Reeser, who is going to be a true freshman and will be on campus in June. So if you can get two guys who have been in college football for a little bit, get them both. Brendan Sullivan, clearly the better option. Guy with Big Ten experience, guys who's won games at the Big Ten level. No, he's not. He's not going to be this game-breaking, wow you with an arm, wow you with his legs kind of player, but he doesn't have to be, right? Like Iowa won 10 games with Deacon Hill last year. Like if he can be, what I've been told is he has average arm strength. That's what it looks like to me on film. Obviously, he's mobile enough. Again, he's not Michael Vick, but he's mobile enough. He's a guy that can come in and win you games, and he has a relationship with Tim Lester. He has 2 years of eligibility left, which is big too. It's clear to me that Sullivan should be their utmost top priority. For a guy like General Booty, I think, again, you go out and get both if you can. He's not your preferred, but he's also like what I've, again, said on Twitter today, said on podcasts, is beggars cannot be choosers. You have to go get one or both if you can. And General Booty did some really good things at the JUCO level. He's got the familial connections. He went to Oklahoma, which is a quarterback factory, so he probably learned some really good things there. No, he didn't break the top 3, but he was also a preferred walk-on. Like, this is not the astronomical, oh my gosh, we got another guy who we know can step in and light up the field. But these are guys that are serviceable, that, especially with Sullivan, you can trust to go out there and be a good quarterback, a good enough quarterback if Cade McNamara goes down with injury.
A couple of things I want to follow up on based on what you just said, Elliot. Is Oklahoma a quarterback factory since Lincoln Riley moved on?
Well, no, but they did have Dylan Gabriel, who's had a pretty damn good season. And they do have, didn't they have the top quarterback in the 23 class that's there now? Something
Jackson
crazy.
Arnold.
Yeah.
So, like, you have a point.
Gabriel came in kind of already developed. I guess that's my only point. Like, he was a big time portal. Fair enough point. I'm not saying he's not. And here's, by the way, let me expound on what you said. A little bit of a difference in opinion on my part, and I didn't watch a ton of Sullivan tape. I think he's a little bit more mobile maybe than you're giving him credit for. I agree he's not Michael Vick, but I compared him to CJ Beathard. I think he's got that level of speed. We're just so used to no mobility whatsoever here, and so maybe that blurs my vision. But I do think he's a breath of fresh air. I compared General Booty. Now, he has not proven anything, right? So he's played in a couple of games at Oklahoma, recorded no stats, put up really good numbers at the JUCO ranks, played like 4 different high schools in Texas, which would be a little bit of a red flag to me. However,
and the Iowa staff typically, if it wasn't a quarterback.
Exactly. That was kind of the perspective I took as well, Elliot. But the point is, I looked at him and saw he's got really good legs as well. I think he's got maybe a little bit better speed and probably a little bit bigger arm than Sullivan. But the difference is, as you said, game experience, Sullivan is proven. And now Booty does come from really good bloodlines. So he's had a whole family that's played high-level college football and had a couple of cups of coffee in the league. So that doesn't always pan out. I mean, there are plenty of examples where that doesn't always, the glove doesn't always fit the hand. But yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I think Sullivan's the guy to go after right now. And obviously they're doing that. I don't know that any of us know whether Iowa's offered him. I would be very surprised if they don't. You can't just offer a kid because they're in the portal, though. You still have to vet these kids. Like, why did you leave? Like, are there any legal issues? Like, you're not just going to take anybody. But I agree with you. Beggars can't be choosers. We are just so used to the statue level quarterback play that we've seen over the last, I mean, even if you go back to Nate Stanley was more mobile than you would think with his size. But in general, Iowa has not had a mobile quarterback since 2016 that has played. So to make very clear, Sullivan is more mobile than Cade McNamara, and Booty is more mobile than Cade McNamara. So I just want to make that clear to everybody. Both of those guys are an upgrade with the legs. Even with a healthy, I believe that even with a healthy Cade McNamara, both those guys have better. I look at Cade McNamara. He's very similar to the two guys we're talking about. The only difference with all 3 of these guys is they're on 3 different levels of experience, right? You know, Cade's competed at the highest of levels in college and had success. Sullivan has been a Big Ten quarterback, not has had as much, obviously, winning success, but has been a starter, and then Booty's had no experience. But I think all of them, talent-wise, are in the same stratosphere. If you just look at raw talent, wouldn't you agree with that, Elliot? Like, you talk about arm talent, Cade doesn't have a great arm either. Yeah. I don't know that's how. I think it's clear Tim Lester's not just, going for the big arm like we've seen in the past from Iowa coaches.
Right. Yeah. I guess when I think of Cade, and I might be I might be factoring Iowa's bias in here because they've paid him so much money already, right? And he is kind of maybe. I guess you know more about him too, and like his ability to lead and to be a guy that loves football and is kind of cerebral when it comes to football. And you don't necessarily know that with either of these two guys. At least you probably know more to that degree with Sullivan because Lester did recruit him in high school. You just don't know with General Booty. Again, not to the same degree because you don't have either of those guys in the room, right? But yeah, I'd probably say once and for all, it would even out because of the level of experience between these guys and General Booty just having like raw talent, right? Like whether or not it's through the roof or he's going to blow your doors off with arm strength or with speed. He kind of makes up for it with those athletic pieces that Sullivan and McNamara don't have.
Yeah. They both can make people miss. They seem comfortable rolling out and throwing on the move. That's something we really haven't seen from Iowa quarterbacks in a while. So, like, the one thing I would say, and even going to Jimmy Sullivan, who I understand was not a Tim Lester product, but I saw Tim didn't Tim just visit Jimmy? So,
I will, if I can interject here, Corey.
Sure.
No, he was not. He was a John Budmeyer product and kind of a Kelvin Bell product too, actually. That's Kelvin Bell's area. The staff wasn't really high on him. And then from what I've been told, Budmeyer decided he liked him. And then everybody was like, oh, which, yeah, fair enough. I mean, he's a guy who coached quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Like, and was a quarterback. Fair enough.
So, yeah, that's my point with Sullivan is like every guy that is in the hopper from here on out that we know of is mobile. Everybody.
Yeah.
So
what I was going to say too, and then I'll get to you, Corey. Sorry. With Jimmy is it's very clear that the guys in the room are not Tim Lester's guys right now. And I mean, literally just by fact, but also you look at what Jimmy's been able to do in his short career thus far in high school. He's mobile. He can sling it. He was at the Elite 11 in Columbus, and our national analyst, Greg Smith, really liked him a lot. He's a 3-star for us. But you could see in that picture that Jimmy posted, you could see the look on Tim Lester's face. It was like, we got a guy. Like, we actually have a guy coming in. That's what it looked like to me anyway, by reading his face. And I don't have any necessary exact intel on that, but to me, that's what it looked like. And I agree. I think Jimmy Sullivan's going to be solid, at least for what we know right now.
And so I go back to what Mark has said over and over again about how Iowa should have taken advantage of the post-winter portal period or postseason portal period. And I mean, I was not as on board with that notion for a couple of different reasons. And in hindsight, I think it's fair to say he was right, and you were right, Elliot. And normally I'd be the guy, chanting the beating the drum, right? So why wasn't I on board? I think the big thing is at the time we didn't know who the OC was. Iowa took forever to hire an OC. And yes, I have more faith in some of the talent behind Deacon Hill, Cade McNamara than I think a lot of people do. I really like James Rezar. I really like Marco Lainez, regardless of some of his arm struggles here over the past year or so. And the other part of this is I had hopes, and I think those hopes were fulfilled with Tim Lester, that they're going to get a guy who understands quarterback development. And that's such a cliche, generic thing to say, but Iowa has not had a guy who has developed quarterbacks here in a long time. I think Ken O'Keefe understood the quarterback position, but frankly, I felt like toward the tail end of his career at Iowa, and I know, Elliot, you weren't covering Iowa at the time, there were times on the sidelines where I thought Ken O'Keefe looked disinterested, and I'm not the only one who made that comment, okay? So regardless of if he was just kind of checking out, ready for retirement a little early or what, they have not had somebody who has been actively developing quarterbacks. So not to say I'm doubling down on the two guys they have on the roster and James Rezar, who's not even on campus yet, but I don't know that I would take two simply because you're already over the limit. Okay, the collective is going to, we assume, pay for these other kids to be in school. So now you have even less collective money to use because you're basically what I compare it to, Elliot, is you're paying for guys like Nick DeYoung and Kyler Fisher that some people didn't even want around this year. Like, I'm just to call a spade. Some people are like, why are we bringing these kids back on scholarship? And so I know Kirk values their experience, and I think both those kids are just wonderful young guys. Had a long conversation with Kyler after the spring practice. Great leader, no question about it. But I'm just saying, we already hear all these complaints about swarm contributions and lack thereof. So you're going to get 2 more quarterbacks. So how many scholarship players are we going to be at by the time we hit fall camp? 90 or more? I mean, they're going after wide receivers. Now it looks like Phil Parker is at least looking around at DBs. I mean, you're more of an expert on the ins and outs of scholarships and the NIL phase. Where are we at with that, Elliot?
Well, they're over. They are 2 over currently. The way it looks to me, and you can see the scholarship chart at iowa.rivals.com. We've got that all laid out. The reason I say that is a couple things. Obviously, they have to get to 85 by August, right? They can't be over.
Technically, yeah.
So, right, technically. So what their options are, they can still medical a guy or 2. Obviously, there's the possibility of like an academic casualty. That's just a possibility. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying there's anybody that's in that territory or whatever, but that is a possibility. And then third, we start talking about the collective, right? And that's a situation where you ask guys who are in their final semester if this is something we can do, like a Nick DeYoung, like a Kyler Fisher, like a Quinn Schulte. And I mean, General Booty was a preferred walk-on at Oklahoma, right? Does he want to continue to be at the highest level?
Is he a preferred walk-on at Oklahoma? Was he really paying his own way though? That's my question.
Know. Yeah, I
can't imagine. I mean, I don't know what type of interest he had out of the JUCO ranks. I know he's put up big numbers in JUCO, but I just like everything now with this era of football and NIL and collectives, and I question everything. Mark, I find myself questioning everything all the time now. Like, I mean, and then you have like the Caden Proctor situations. As a Hawkeye fan, you're constantly just like, all right, do we really believe this? If I will be completely objective and transparent here, I mentioned it last night. I was talking about Booty on my channel. And Elliot, I texted you yesterday because I had a number of people reach out to me and say, hey, there's people, including Elliot Clough of Rivals, who are saying that Sullivan isn't taking a visit until later this week.
Source said it. I didn't say
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm never upset if somebody's going to report information. First of all, I don't consider myself an insider. I'm also working 2 hours away from Iowa City. Once in a while, someone who I trust will give me some information and I'll kind of transfer that down. But my point is, like, even that information, you and I were having a conversation privately about like, okay, he's taking an official visit, obviously starting today, May 7th. That's the common denominator. I think you probably have more insight into that, Elliot. But I was told on pretty good authority he was there over the weekend. And I think you and I both said to each other, look, he could have been there and he's not taking an official, but he's still there. I mean, I had people tell me that he was taking pictures with players and hanging around the facility. Now, does Iowa want that to be common knowledge? I'm sure Iowa doesn't want anything with the quarterback position to be spewed all over the internet, right? Like recruiting wise, they're out in the open anyways. But do you doubt for 1 second, Elliot, that Iowa tells these recruits, quarterback specifically, hey, we're interested in you, but if you want a chance to be here, do not talk to people? Is there any doubt that happens? I would almost be surprised if it doesn't.
No. I mean, people are making stuff up anyway, right? Lincoln Keenholes, right?
Devin Brown.
Or Devin Brown.
Yeah.
You like you said, you brought that up to me privately. And I mean, if you told me that, if somebody told me that, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, we are trying to keep this quiet. We don't want this to leak, even though it did leak that he is on a visit on Tuesday. But somebody did point out to me that Northwestern had a baseball game against Iowa this weekend. And by the sounds of it, that was pretty convenient.
Yeah. So it frankly, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But I think I've noticed some people like to, this has happened a lot more over the last year. And again, this is from a perspective of someone who's not covering Iowa the way you and your guys cover it every day, Elliot. But like there's constantly people who are trying to like pit people against one another. Like these different forms of media. I feel like there's always like, I don't know if you get some of this interaction too, but there's always people that are saying, hey, this person's saying this, this person's arguing what you're saying. And I'm like, who cares? Like it doesn't really matter at this point. Like you said, we know Sullivan's interested in Iowa and Iowa's interested in Sullivan. We also know Gavin Wimsatt is gone. We know Heward's kid is gone. So we're basically, as far as the portal pool in general, we know that Iowa needs to grab somebody, whether that be Booty, whether that be Sullivan, or both, or they may have to call Deacon Hill and say, we love you, Deke. Come back. I'm joking, of course. But like, by the way, have you heard anything about his recruitment, Elliot?
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
I'm just curious where he ends up.
Right. He was pretty public last time he was in the portal about what offers he got and stuff. So I don't know
Maybe
if
he wants to play it differently.
Doing that again or not. But yeah, I did reach out to him after he entered just to say it's good talking with you. And then I never got a message back. So
I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh. I deal with this kind of nonsense all the time. And again, I'm just imagining you do it so much better than I do. That's your job. And I just like whenever Mark, you know this, you used to, I mean, you weren't working the recruiting beat, but you were covering, let's see, you worked SEC. What did you do for the SEC, Mark? I know your background. I should know.
Well, I was a sports director at a CBS station.
Okay,
and
that's right.
We had Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alabama, all three in our backyard, so we had to cover all three. So yeah.
All I know is in this day and age of social media, man. Like I said, you're doing some tough work out there, Elliot.
Mm-hmm.
So
it makes things a lot easier. It makes things a lot more difficult too.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what is the status on General Booty? Because I know there's talk about him potentially getting to campus. That's not anything I've been told, but I know people have said that over the last 24 hours that he might be on campus soon.
That's the talks at this moment in time. I've heard a couple dates, but nothing is solidified. So I don't want to put anything out right now as far as a date goes. But as far as I know, things are in the works, and they're hoping to get him on campus. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about a specific date or anything like that. So,
well, my final point, Mark, and I'll throw it back to you. But going back to some of my hesitancy back in January about going full bore for a quarterback, now that Lester is here, and I may be totally ignorant and presumptuous with this, but I still in the back of my mind have faith in Lester to be able to get everything he can out of guys like Linez, guys like Resar, or whoever else is on that roster. Not saying that they're going to be all Big Ten, Mark, but what I'm saying is we have grown accustomed in Hawkeyeville to watching quarterbacks come to Iowa and leave Iowa being the same exact player. And you could argue sometimes even worse. Like sometimes you could argue they came here and were a better player early in their careers than later in their careers, a la Nate Stanley and Ricky Stanzi. So, again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done that, but I have not given up hope on Marco Linez. And I think if anybody's going, like, he's only been with Lester for one spring. And I know that, he's limited with what he can do in the summer. I'm sure he's going to go back and work with Rassiopi over in New Jersey over the summer. Then he gets back in fall camp. He's going to be working more. The switch could flip. And he's got some traits that Iowa has not had. So, yes, they need a quarterback. I don't know that they need two. But they can get somebody to walk on. They need to walk on anyways because they lost Pahalski, right? They need somebody to walk on. I don't know if it'll be Booty, but maybe it will. Booty, Mark, Booty.
Yes, you can have some fun with that. Everyone already has, so you can do all sorts of marketing with that, Corey.
He was
Sponsorship.
selling NIL underwear, I think, at Oklahoma.
Underwear and socks. Underwear and socks.
There you
He
go.
was riding a horse in his underwear. Did you see that?
I did not.
Would your channel get demonetized if we shared that picture, Mark?
I may get sick, but we may not get demonetized. I don't know what the combination there would be. Yeah.
Corey and I spend our time on different parts of the internet.
Please don't confuse what I said. Please. I don't know that I can handle General Booty starting at Iowa, because having to say the name over and over again, we're going to have to figure out a nickname for the kid or something else.
You call him the General if you want to keep it as clean as possible.
GB.
Yeah.
GB.
Easy. Yeah.
I will make these two comments getting back to the football aspect of this, and then we can get Elliot and Corey your response to this, although Corey's heard it quite a bit. I am going after Brendan Sullivan, even if Cade McNamara has been healthy the last 2 years. If Cade McNamara is the quarterback of 2021, which was a good quarterback, a game manager quarterback who led a Big Ten championship team, which seemed like a perfect transition fit to the Iowa offense, you're still only one play away from going to a complete wild card, inexperienced quarterback. So I still go after Brendan Sullivan, even if I know Cade McNamara is healthy. And I don't know that Cade McNamara is the automatic starter, even with in complete health, taking on Brendan Sullivan. Sullivan, with weapons on the outside similar to Iowa's, and not the running back stable of running backs to the caliber that Iowa has for this 24 season, completed 69% of his passes, 200 passes in Big Ten play. That's quite a sample size. I understand a lot of dump downs, a lot of conservative throw game being emphasized there at Northwestern, but still, this is a guy that takes care of the football and knows where to go with the football and is highly accurate. So that's point number one. I go after him regardless of Cade McNamara's health. That doesn't even need to be called into question because Cade McNamara is a wild card from a health standpoint. Number two, I would think that the choice on General Booty would strictly be, this guy's not going to play this year anyway. So let's base this on our evaluation of him long term. And if we think we can develop him into a potential starting quarterback here, then we go after him. If not, there's no reason to go in that direction unless they can work out something off scholarship and bring him in and it doesn't cost them much.
Well, how many years left does he have, Elliot? 2?
I think 2.
He's been in college football for 3 or 4 years. Now, some of that's been the JUCO ranks. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know how you look at him as a long-term project, Mark, when he's already been in 2 different schools.
So my thought there is he might play this year if you don't get Sullivan in. I mean, when I talk about Marco Lainez and his struggles in the open spring practice, what I want to emphasize is that I have not given up on Marco Lainez and his success in college football. He hasn't impressed me to date. I don't think he's a starting quarterback in the Big Ten right now. That is what I'll say. With General Booty's experience at, JUCO, getting time at Oklahoma, whatever, he might come in and be your second best quarterback out of the portal very well. I mean, I don't think this is a long-term play. I think this is he could be your second best quarterback. He might play this year, and it's an insurance policy if you bring in Sullivan as well. And if you don't get, and thinking eligibility wise, it makes less sense if Booty has 2 years of eligibility left, and you bring in both, because you're going to play Sullivan this year and probably next, unless you think Booty can compete with him next season. And I mean, then if you bring in both and they both have 2 years of eligibility, even if you just bring in one and they have 2 years of eligibility, then you're looking at a scenario where Marco Lainez could enter the portal sooner rather than later. So I don't want to dive too much into the theoretical there, but to me, I don't think it's a long-term play with General Booty. And, in terms of bringing in Sullivan if McNamara had been healthy the last 2 years, again, theoretical situation, dude, I don't know. Like he could have come in last year and been phenomenal. He wasn't. In his 4 games that he played. And considering the health, I mean, you just like it is a win if you bring in Brendan Sullivan. And it's not we'll say this, it's not a home run to bring in Brendan Sullivan, but it's a solid double. It's a solid hit to the outfield.
But then what's your response to what I said about the scholarship thing? Like, do you think that's going to sit well with donors if they're 5 over the scholar and they're having to pay for 5 different basically scholarships that,
right?
Like, does that set well with donors, the people that are forking over the dough for the Swarm?
And this is a scenario where, like you said, the collective isn't exactly in a position to go to their donors and say, hey, we need this money, because they're not making a ton of money anyway already, or they don't have a ton of money to pull from anyway. So the more we talk about it, the more I talk myself into just bringing in Brendan Sullivan. But in terms of like personnel wise, that's where it would make sense to bring in both. But again, even if you just bring in Brendan Sullivan, you're still kind of in that situation, right? You have to get to 85 scholarships. Like technically, not technically, whatever, you have to get to 85 scholarships. And they're still over, and they still need a defensive tackle, or they still would like a defensive tackle in that second group behind Aaron Graves and Y.A. Black, and they still could get they're going to get a quarterback one way or another. They have to. And you still want a wide receiver, right? You didn't get Raylan Sharp, who chose Fresno State over Iowa. So you're in a position of need when you're already in a surplus for scholarships. It's a situation that they dug themselves into, and now they have to maneuver it out. And what did we hear from KF after the open spring practice? It'll figure itself out. Well,
I think my guess is, and I could be wrong on this, but my guess is that Kirk expected more people to enter the portal, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I agree. But that's also a scenario where they didn't, and they're too over, so it didn't figure itself out, right?
And I'll say this because portal window has closed, and it is what it is now. There are guys like a Zach Tweet, like a Jaden Montgomery. Cale Vanderbush leaving made sense. He's from Plainfield,
Illinois.
Is he Illinois or Indiana? I was thinking he was Indiana.
Illinois.
Okay, so you have Cale Vanderbush. Who knows where he goes, but he was buried. You have a linebacker. I thought they'd lose at least one linebacker. I'm shocked they didn't lose a running back. I don't know how on earth Tim Lester and Liddell Betts convinced all those guys to stay. And that's phenomenal on his part, because if I had a choice as a fan of who I want to leave, it wouldn't be anybody from that running back room. So I'm okay with dealing with that. That's a good problem to have. But I am still shocked that they were able to hold on to all those guys.
You were correct. Indiana for Vanderbush. I just looked. But yes, I agree. They are in a situation where I looked it up and I included it in an article, but I think it was running back, linebacker, and offensive line account for 38 of their 87 scholarships. Like, you think Michael Myslinski is going to see the field this year?
He hasn't been on the field. He hasn't been healthy. I mean, like, there's an example of someone who I hope he gets healthy and he ends up having a great career. But would I be shocked if he ends up taking a medical? No, I wouldn't be shocked by that.
And that's a way more or less around the transfer portal, is if you get a medical, they can enter the portal and go somewhere else on scholarship.
And you don't want to wish for someone to leave the program.
Absolutely.
But like I want to make something clear. When I brought up like people like Zach Tweed or even Cale Crow, those are kids from nearby my town of Ames. They're both from Story County. Those are kids that are like, hey, they're not playing. So I would like to see them have success. And maybe they go through the program, use a scholarship up at Iowa, and turn out on the other end just great human beings. And I'm sure that will happen. But if they want to play football, I'm not in a position to give them advice, but my advice might be, if I was, hey, you and I would be a great spot, or Drake might be a great spot. Or if you're one of those guys from Story County, could you find a spot back at Iowa State as a walk-on and work your way onto scholarship. I know that's asking a lot for someone who earned a scholarship out of high school, but that is kind of what I anticipate. Or Jaden Montgomery, would he maybe go back to Wisconsin and find a place back there? But it didn't happen, and now the portal window has closed. And yeah, I mean, they've got their needs. I would guess, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, Elliot, but my guess is they're going to still try to find a receiver. I know they were in on the kid up at North Dakota State.
Yeah, Elijah Green. Yep.
Elijah Green. Where is that at right now?
I couldn't tell you. Haven't heard anything about it. I mean, that list of schools that have shown interest in him and that he wanted to continue to talk to, that's going to be a tough. Assuming they offer him scholarships, that's going to be a tough get, because there's a lot of schools on that list that would probably be better options than Iowa for a kid like that.
Yeah. Well, Mark, somebody's going to be in for a rude awakening in September, and it might be me when Iowa trots out there with Marco Lainez and it's a total disaster. And I'll come on this show the next Tuesday and say, Mark, I may have been wrong about the expectations I had for Tim Lester to just, I'm not saying this offense is going to go to being a top 50 offense, but I just think it's been so bad in so many different areas, and just having someone palpable and capable is going to make such a difference right away.
They have a very strong running back room and tight end room, if nothing else. The offensive line is, of course, a huge key to this in regards to being a much better offense than what they've been the last 5 years. But Elliot, we appreciate you being here. I know that you need to take off. Oh, we lost you. I think you're on mute.
Yep, I muted my mic while I was texting. Sorry. I can stick around a little bit longer. That's what I was looking at my phone for.
Nice. Excellent. Everyone, Elliot Clough, Iowa rivals. So get there. We'll have the banner up there. Unless we've got anything on the quarterback talk, you had mentioned to me a lot of activities, a lot of assignments that you have coming up here in the near future. So anything tied to recruiting in regards to giving the fine folks any hints on big targets and leans coming the Hawkeyes way?
Nick Brooks.
Well, in terms of Nick Brooks, he just released his top 6. Was it last month? I can remember correctly. I'm to try to put it all together. Iowa, Texas, USC, Georgia, Colorado. And the 6th one is killing me. Tennessee, maybe.
And they already had him committed, and he decommitted. So
right, yes. So those are all schools with a bevy of maybe not all of them, but a lot of them have a bevy of NIL collective riches. I know Nick pretty well, and I know that relatively well, considering covering recruiting. And I know that being close to home is something that he really, really emphasized that first time around in terms of his commitment. It's really important to him, especially having spent the first 2 years of his high school career in Georgia, away from his siblings, away from his family. So by no means do I think Iowa is out on his recruitment. By no means do I think Iowa is in a position to I do think they're still in a position to land him. Where I'm at right now is I haven't changed my future cast that I put in June of last year. And I don't think anybody has on Rivals. Would I be shocked if he ends up on his official at Georgia and decides this is where I want to be, at USC, at Texas? I wouldn't. At the same time, there is still value at Iowa that he's not going to get at these other programs. I've talked to his high school coach, Coach White at Cedar Rapids Kennedy. His son is Max White, running back, preferred walk-on running back at Iowa. And Coach White is definitely a proponent of the Hawkeyes for that reason. He's been in this area for a long time, and he definitely sees the value of ending up at a place like Iowa for Nick. Ultimately, the choice is Nick's decision. And do I know for sure where he's going to end up? I don't.
Can you explain that benefit? When you talk about there being benefits at Iowa that don't exist at Georgia, Texas, and USC, I'm just searching for those.
It's the familial stuff. It's
okay.
the being close to home.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
So stop
Because-
covering up the golden doodle. We want
I
to
know.
see the golden doodle. He
He
woke
got
up. so
major
let it-
sleep face back there. But that's really what it is. And every time he had talked about Iowa to me prior to his first commitment, he had talked about it being family and a sentimental connection. They care about his siblings. They care about his mom. And I don't know these other programs like that. I don't know that they're bringing brothers and sisters and mom and dad on these trips to go to these schools. I imagine mom and dad are probably going to be on the officials. But he has 18 siblings. I don't know if you guys knew that, half step siblings. So lots of family here. And I know that being back in Cedar Rapids after being in Georgia for 2 years, it was like what Coach White told me is like, he's a completely different kid. He's happy. And so in terms of the familial connections, the relationships, that's where it comes to Iowa, just having that sort of edge that these other programs can't provide. So that's where I'm at with Nick. I don't think he makes his decision until like right before the signing period, signing day rather in December. So, and I truthfully, I haven't talked to him since late February. Ever since his decommitment, he's kind of gone off the radar. And I don't blame him for that at all. So he did take a spring visit to Iowa. He's taken an official in June. So Nick Brooks still on Iowa's radar, still a possible commit there. In terms of anything else, Iowa just offered a string of other talent, out-of-state talent, a couple Chicago area kids. Drew McPherson is a guy that I just spoke with. He plays running back and wide receiver at Loyola Academy in Chicago, same high school as Fitzgerald, former head coach at Northwestern. His son plays at. He's their quarterback there. They just offered him. He's an athlete. Most of his offers are at running back and wide receiver. Iowa's offered him to play safety. Just dropped a future cast in on him. I think he's going to be a Hawkeye. And then a couple other kids that they're in on. This class is going to be a little bit smaller, but they've got a really, really good start to the class, especially in guys like Thomas Meyer, Carson Cooney, Bert Goucher, Joey Van Wetzinga. They're in a good spot right now. They're going to need to make a push in this class to get some DBs, wide receivers, because of the wide receiver coaching hire in Bud Meyer, that flip from Copeland to Bud Meyer. They're making a push right now to get a couple guys on campus for officials that haven't taken unofficials to Iowa at this point in time. So that's kind of where they're at, just in terms of the recruitment of the wide receiver spot. But from what I've been told, Bud Meyer is out on the recruiting trail. He is pushing Iowa to guys, and he's a pretty good recruiter, from what I've been told, from what I understand. And he's been kind of like a breath of fresh air to the staff in that spot. So. Any other names while we're on it, Corey?
Well, first of all, Bud Meyer being a good recruiter, he better start getting players, because they have been so, like, the fact that they didn't get Raylan Sharp, that's no endorsement of him as a recruiter.
Touche. Yeah.
Now, whether Raylan Sharp just went to what's this thing? So his post, Raylan Sharp, for anybody that doesn't know, is a kid from Missouri State. It's like 5'8", 5'9", little speedster. I really liked the fact that Iowa was in on him, because they typically in the past have gone after these big lumbering receivers. Okay, let's go after some guys with speed and regardless of size. He picks Fresno State, and in his commitment post, was there an implication that it was about money? Was that what the
something
post
about
was about?
Got to get bread because it's on the table or something like that?
That was such an odd. Now, I don't know that he meant it that way. Well, why would he?
I think it was a quote from the Sketch, the "What's up, brother" guy. You know what I'm talking about? He actually tagged Sketch in his commitment post on Instagram. So
okay. Well, if Fresno State's outbidding Iowa for receivers, then
I don't think that's
again, holy cow.
I think it was just a quote. And I mean,
but frankly, that's even more of an indictment on Iowa. The fact that they can't get him away from Fresno State.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I thought the same thing. I said the same thing on our podcast. That's just where they're at right now in terms of, I mean, it takes a while. It's going to take a while to get that Brian Ferentz stink out of the facility and off campus, right? Like,
who has more receivers in the NFL though right now, Mark? Iowa or Fresno State?
I assume Fresno State does, because if you take out the tight end position, then
Devontae Adams is from Fresno. So like even just that right there, would I rather go to Iowa or Fresno State? You could argue. Now, Tim Lester's had some success with receivers, and I think that's the one thing he needs to be very, and I know, I don't know the ins and outs, the logistics besides, hey, different coaches have different regions, and obviously your position coach is going to be a big part of the recruiting process. But I think Tim Lester, in spite of the fact that he is a quarterbacks guy, he needs to be involved heavily with receiver recruiting. And as the overseer, as the GM of the offense, like those are the two biggest problems, are quarterback and receiver. So to me, he's got to be very involved in both. The John Budmeyer promotion was already highly questionable because John Budmeyer has no experience coaching receivers. He also didn't really put much of a resume together as Iowa's quarterbacks coach as it relates to on-field production. And yes, he was the de facto quarterbacks coach. I know he technically was not, but so yeah, those are still major question marks. I do think that they've got talent there in that room, more talent than they've had in past years, with a year older Caleb Brown, who I thought looked really good at the open practice in the spring, Elliott, and assuming Seth Anderson get healthy, this is the second straight spring he's missed. I'm in shock by the number of offers that Jacob Bostic has gotten since he entered the portal. We haven't talked about that on this show, Mark. Here's a kid who didn't play at Iowa. He
4 years of eligibility. It's 4 years of eligibility that he's still got left.
What's that got to do with anything, though? I mean, but why is he getting offers from Ole Miss and Texas A&M?
Right. What I'll say in terms of what I expected from his recruitment was, Iowa State, Vanderbilt. I think Fresno State offered too. These initial programs that are group of five or at that, second or third or maybe fourth tier in Power Four. What I think, he was a 5'7", 3-star recruit for us on Rivals. He had some pretty good film. He also had an issue with injuries. And when it comes down to the reason he's getting those offers, it's because of that potential. And I genuinely believe the 4 years left of eligibility is important here, because he's a long-term investment, right? He's not a mercenary for a year.
Yeah.
And he's got experience at the college level, though it's at Iowa, though he doesn't have a catch yet in his college career. I was excited about his potential.
Yeah.
I'll say that. And to boot, I know this doesn't exactly have anything to do with recruiting and why he's getting these offers, but he's a freaking great dude. I was really looking forward to covering him, but he's headed elsewhere, wherever that might be.
And that's another indictment on Iowa, the receiving core, because regardless of where he lands, we never got to, he was working through injuries, but apparently he didn't have enough faith in the program to give any of those remaining 4 years to Iowa. So, and somebody suggested to me after Iowa State offered, if I thought that Iowa State was just trying to steal some information from Iowa and offering it, they're not going to offer him a scholarship to steal information about Iowa. I guarantee you, John Haycock is not that concerned with Tim Lester's offense yet. Now, maybe he will be, but he ain't concerned with what Lester has, got together. I think proof has still got to be in the pudding.
Yeah. So it's wide receiver group. I am not probably as, I don't know if bullish is the right word, but as bullish on them as you are, Corey. I believe
I'm bullish on them.
You said you believe, you're more excited about them than you have been in recent years.
Everything is relative, Elliot. Everything is relative.
Okay. When you've got,
I think Caden Weegen's going to play a lot.
Yes, he will. Yeah. What I was telling Adam Jacoby, our publisher at Iowa.Rivals.com, is after the open spring practice, in terms of airing the ball out, obviously you've got Luke Lachey, obviously you've got Addison Ostrenga, obviously you got Zach Ortworth. But in terms of that wide receiver group, it really feels like their only hope is Caleb Brown and Caden Weegen. We don't know anything about Jarriett Bowie. We don't know anything about Dayton Howard. We have heard the name Alec Wick a lot for like that is just like a running joke in my head at this point. And you've got 2 freshman wide receivers, Reese Vanderzee, who is thin but will be a true X at some point in time. KJ Parker.
He's not there yet. Neither of them are there yet.
That's what I'm just going to say. I was going to say KJ Parker is reporting as well in June. And I think KJ Parker is more of a receiver that Lester likes, even though he was brought on before Lester, right? Like he's a guy you can get the ball to in space and is going to go make a play. And that's what you want, right? And so I don't think either of them play this year.
You did miss one guy in there, Alex Moda.
Oh,
Alex Moda.
Brain fart, sorry.
Who was he even dressed? I don't think he was dressed for spring, was he?
Cast wrap sort of thing. I don't know that he broke anything.
But see, again, my point is that's more development time lost.
Exactly. They're not in a good spot as far as wide receiver goes.
Now, one guy you didn't mention at the top was Seth Anderson. So he's missed 2 straight spring practices. Where's your concern with him other than just he's still in large part unproven?
Well, supposedly he's supposed to be back at 100% for fall. So I'll say that first. The thing that I am probably more confused than concerned about with Seth Anderson is how little he played at the end of the year. Like, did he see the field in that like Big Ten championship bowl game?
Again, that was a Brian Ferentz-led offense. So anything that happened under his direction, I just toss out the window. But yeah, I agree.
I don't know why. I would love to know why.
Why did Brian do a lot of things? I mean, at some point, why did Brian do a lot of things?
Yeah.
Why wasn't Marco Lainez? Listen, why wasn't Marco Lainez at least a part of a game plan at some point? With as bad as quarterback play was, regardless of his arm, with his leg talent, why was he at least not used at some point somewhere? The only thing I can think of, Mark, and this took a lot of deep meditation and pondering, is incompetence. That's the only thing I can really think of as to why you wouldn't put, and I'm not saying that Brian Ferentz as a person is incompetent, but as far as personnel and decision-making, that is an incompetent decision, in my opinion, based on what we've seen from him on the ground.
It's not the Iowa way. You choose a starting quarterback, and that's your starting quarterback. You don't mess around with bringing somebody else in to give the defense a different look, confuse anybody.
You know what?
You don't want to do that.
I heard this from Scott Docterman. Does incredible work for The Athletic. I think it was on Legends and Listeners. They were talking about Lisa Bluter and how she molded how they did things in the tournament to fit the skill set and the personnel that they had because Molly Davis was out, right? They had to change things. He said if Lisa Bluter was the head coach of Iowa football last year, they would have been running the Wildcat. But that's not how Iowa does things. They're not flexible. They have a way they do things, and that's the way they do things, and that's it. I mean, Cooper DeJean would have been Wildcat quarterback, right? If Lisa Bluter, like that would have been the best option last year. But obviously didn't happen.
By the way, Scott Jensen, who's made a couple of comments here recently on my channel. I've not responded to Scott, and I don't know if this is tongue in cheek, but he said this multiple times in response to a couple of posts. Cade will be healthy for 2024. No need for another backup.
Oh my God.
I mean, do people actually, no offense to Scott, but do people actually, like, is that really where they're at? That we just know Cade McNamara, who's coming off 2 serious knee injuries, he is going to be healthy. Whoever, even if a guy is 100%, like even Patrick Mahomes needs a capable backup.
Exactly.
Cade doesn't have.
Even if it could be guaranteed that he's 100% right now, we only have assurance that he's probably going to be 100% when he steps on the field of day 1 of August camp.
Who do they play week 1? Illinois State?
I was going to say Illinois State or Troy.
Okay. No, Troy's week 3 because I got a wedding that weekend. If Illinois State comes with some D end and Nick DeYoung is somebody's dinged up and Nick DeYoung's playing tackle. Poor Nick DeYoung. Pella native, love the kid, but poor Nick DeYoung. He lines up as the tackle and he just completely whiffs. And somebody just takes Cade out. I mean, just blasts him. One play into the season, now all of a sudden it's about the backup. So I hope people can have some perspective here.
Or doesn't. Like, Cade's contact or injury last year was non-contact.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yes. If they just call a bootleg and Cade McNamara is out there in space and has to turn a corner and all of a sudden.
Like, Corey, we saw it in the open spring practice. Even during warm-ups, he was gimping around.
Well, hopefully that's different in a month. Because, yeah, he was moving very gingerly on those legs just during the little activity that we saw from him on the sidelines.
Right. And I mean, I don't know how much you saw the social team posted that he played in this softball game with a big thing on his knee. I mean, it wasn't his brace, but I mean, I guess that can be considered encouraging if you really, really want to be delusional.
You know what? When Cade McNamara committed to Iowa a year and a half ago, everybody was so head over heels. And again, we've talked about why that was, and it made sense. However, I said multiple times leading up to last season, regardless of his health, I said Cade McNamara is going to disappoint a ton of Iowa fans. And that's nothing against Cade McNamara, but the expectations for him were ridiculous. But they were relative to what we have seen and how pitiful Iowa's room is. You get a guy who just was able to at least be a game manager at a Power 5 program, and you're doing cartwheels. And so I think we have to realize that, like, not only are you getting a guy who, yeah, he's proven, but he's just proven as a game manager. He's not some guy who's going to tear up the field on the ground, throw the ball 50 yards down the field. He's a game manager, and he's also coming off 2 serious knee injuries, has not proven that he can stay healthy, and has not really played a long stretch of competitive football for like 3 years. I remember last August when remember the social media post, Elliot, when he was out, right? He missed kids, or he got hurt at Kids Day. He's out, and then like a week or two before the season started, Iowa posted that picture with it was like Kinnick and the water tower and the sun in the background, and all it said was like number 12. Like, he's back. Like, we treat this guy like he's some superhero.
Yeah. They love him on the social channel.
I don't blame him.
Yeah.
I don't blame him, but I'm just saying, I think a lot of people's this is how they consume information, right? They, like you just said, the social media is the driving force for a lot of this. And so people just got to, as best they can, try to check themselves and realize the big picture of who's in that room, what they still need, and reasonable expectations.
To go along with the storylines that you guys just painted, let me throw another one out there. Let's say Cade McNamara makes it to week 5, and this team's going to Columbus, Ohio. And the last time these guys saw Cade McNamara, he was taking a Big Ten championship away from them, and they were losing their first game in forever and being denied a college football playoff appearance and a number 1 seed in the playoffs and the whole deal. Now, I'm not saying I'm not accusing Ohio State players of going to take cheap shots or anything like that, but don't be surprised if there's not just a little bit more incentive from some really fast, talented players that should have one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the country.
I'll give Deacon Hill credit for this, and I know this is anecdotal, but I'll give Deacon Hill credit for I never worried about him getting hurt. Not because I didn't care if he got hurt. I promise that's not what I mean, but it was this big physical guy, a lot tougher on the field than Spencer Petras ever was. And I have nothing against Spencer Petras, but proof is in the pudding. On the football field, he appeared to be the more physical, tougher player, even though he made a lot of mistakes. He wasn't very accurate with the football. I can't say the same thing about Cade McNamara because I have not seen him take a beating over a long period of time and hold up. And like you said, Elliot, that was the play against, what was it, Penn State or Michigan State, whatever it was, like Michigan State. When he went down was completely non-contact. And when he went down at Kids Day, it was non-contact. That's where this all started. It was at Kids Day last August. I mean, those things happen. And unfortunately, some guys are prone.
And here's the thing as well. And I don't want to forecast anything negative here because I want everyone to be healthy. But there's a long history in every sport of once you get hurt, even if you've been extremely healthy to that point, there's a long history of a lot of guys that once you get hurt, it's difficult for a lot of guys, not everyone, to stay healthy after that.
I watched your morning show this morning, Mark, and you were talking about Bo Jackson. And, for a guy as incredibly gifted as Bo Jackson was, one freak thing, and he was never the same. By the way, let me make a quick correction as to something you said this morning, because I want to make this very clear. This is related to Iowa. You made the comment that graduates can enter the portal at any time. That's no longer the case as of last month. So graduates can no longer enter. That portal window closed for them one day after the window closed for everybody else. So, like, at this point, had it been the rule not been changed, I'd have been like, okay, they may still lose somebody, somebody that graduates early and they head out in June like Charlie Jones did. That's not going to happen. So, like Elliot outlined the ways they get down to 85 as it stands. It's not going to be through a graduate transfer.
Yeah, the NCAA in their infinite wisdom gave them one more day. Then
I don't get what was the point of that?
I have no idea. Why does the NCAA do a lot of things? It's likening Brian Ferentz to the NCAA, like we were having that conversation a bit ago. That was when I wrote an article about what they're going to do about their transfer or their scholarship situation. That was the first headline, or one of the first bullet points is don't count on the transfer or the grad transfers, because that's a situation you can't. It's like, nah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we don't need to get into right now. But it's just another NCAA stupid thing that they decided to change for some apparent reason that I don't understand.
And we haven't talked about this yet, but with Ed Podolak stepping away, the rumor mill has indicated to me through some anonymous sources that Elliot Clough is one of the top candidates to replace Ed Podolak.
The rumor mill is wrong.
I promise it wasn't the same source that gave me the Brendan.
Okay, all right.
We'll keep that one anonymous too. So
the experience on ESPN Plus from college just wasn't enough.
Were you on ESPN Plus in college?
Yeah, I did color for women's basketball and softball at UNI.
Wow, awesome!
So,
you have some of that footage? I'm sure you do.
I sure I could go back into the email and find it. I'm sure I submitted it somewhere for a job that I got rejected from.
Absolutely.
It all worked out.
Yes.
It all worked out.
Shout out to Rivals for paying the bills, man.
Exactly. Well, Elliot, thank you so much for stopping by. Everybody check out Elliot's work at, give us the URL one more time, Elliot. I forget where the dots are.
Iowa.rivals.com.
There it is. Okay. Also, you see the X handle there with Elliot Clough. Elliot, thanks so much for being here. Great breakdown, sir.
Definitely. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Elliot. Why are we not filling the space here?
I don't know how that works. Let's try that. No, I don't care for that. And then if we switch back, no, I don't know.
That's weird.
There. It doesn't correct itself.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a glitch. I think you figured out a glitch, a little cheat code
there. There's a glitch there that shouldn't exist with our friends at StreamYard.
Yeah.
But it was good to have Elliot. I find this quarterback situation to be rather intriguing with the Hawkeyes.
Don't you just love talking about General Booty?
General Booty.
Like the guy, like I made the comment that he wasn't promoted from Colonel Booty or Major Booty. I made the comment on my channel. I said he's majoring in, I think, journalism or something. He's not generaling in journalism. He's majoring in journalism. Anyways, you could go on forever with the jokes.
Oh, they're there. You know,
he's coming to Iowa potentially, Mark, to be the backup, not the back end or the rear end. He's coming to Iowa to be the backup. So,
and we certainly, I don't think want to go down to the path of making any connections with the tight end play. in General Booty.
Okay. All right. It's almost 5:40, Mark.
Yes, it is. It's past your bedtime.
Yeah, that's right.
Corey's got a busy schedule. We appreciate Corey making this work every Tuesday, folks. So lock in on From the Hawkeye of the Storm, of course, and then bring some friends with you back here next Tuesday 4:30 Central for Iowa Hawkeyes live right here at the Voice of College Football. Maybe we'll have some quarterback news. Regardless, we will always have some interesting conversation with Corey. And I took part in a poll today. I rarely do this, but I took part in this poll because I would like to see you after the Mystics. Did I get that right?
Mystics
I got
Fever.
that right, didn't I?
No. Fever.
The Fever.
Indiana
the
Fever.
I thought I got that right. The
Shit.
Fever after their something exhibition game.
No. It's their regular season opener next Tuesday.
Oh, well,
by the way,
goes without. You were just baiting your audience. You were just teasing your audience with that poll.
Well, I had somebody actually respond and say, "No, stick to the Hawks." Tim in the chat. We're not here blaming the kid for his name. And by the way, for anybody that says you can't joke around about the kid's name, he is endorsed in underwear. He's got an underwear line. So he has embraced it, folks.
Yes.
He's got an underwear line. There's a commercial with him in his underwear on a horse. I know this not because I looked it up, but because it was sent to me. There literally is a commercial with that. So just to make something very clear.
Is that his given name?
Yes. Absolutely. It's his given name.
General Axel Booty.
Is it Axel Booty?
Yeah.
General Axel Booty. Oh, interesting.
All right,
Axel's unique enough.
Hope and pray that he gets signed by Iowa, and we will be able to continue the string of puns and innuendos. All right, everyone, back here next Tuesday. In the meantime, from the Hawkeye of the Storm, we'll see you next time.